So, I don't know what's going on with the YouTube app now, but I cannot get my camera to go the other way like I normally would. So we get this upright position here, which is not the way I would typically want to do these live stream videos. Or really, I mean, they're just kind of more for shorts, right? This way of having the camera angle. But anyway, we're going to try it out anyhow and see. What is this? All right, see if we can get some comments. There we go. Got comments going through. Got 4 people watching, 1 thumbs up. Be sure and hit the like button when you come into the live stream. By hitting that like button, the YouTube algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. So thank you for being here today. I keep getting the question, when are interest rates going to come down? And this is probably one of the biggest questions that an individual would have in order to figure out what it is that they need to do with their lives, where it is that they want to position themselves when it comes to investments, business, retirement. When is interest rates going to move, and which direction are they going to go, and how much of an impact is that going to have on my life? That's the question that a lot of people ask, and it's really difficult to answer this question in a general sense because each and every one of us individually has positioned ourselves differently, and so therefore the interest rate adjustment is going to affect us differently. So when I think about when the Fed moves and how that impacts the markets, the economy, the individual person out there, a lot of times people have an assumption that comes from the Federal Reserve and their interest rate setting policy and how that's going to end up reflecting when it comes to, say, mortgage rates. So now let's think about it for just a minute, because the Federal Reserve had just recently adjusted rates, a whole percentage point, from their 5.5% down to 4.5%, somewhere in the neighborhood, right? It kind of fluctuates a little bit on the Fed funds rate on where it is every single day on the overnight lending rate, but that's not a huge move, right? But it was in the downward direction. However, what do we see happening within interest rates? They completely move the opposite direction. So when people say, man, when the Federal Reserve goes to lower rates, when will that happen? What kind of impact will that have on my life? How is it that I'm going to be in a position in which that I can buy a house, or is that going to be affordable? And these are the questions that come up. But yet the reality of the situation is that when you go and listen to the Federal Reserve and them talking about the lowering of interest rates, that has a profound impact on lowering rates. The moment that they actually cut rates, the market sees it very differently, and they see it as a damaged economy that the Federal Reserve is trying to support unemployment or support the labor market or something of that nature. They start getting very confused about what it is that the Federal Reserve is actually attempting to do. And so when they hear that, they hear the Federal Reserve cut rates, they're like, oh gosh, man, now I'm really scared about what's going on. I need to get a return on my capital that's going to be more, because I'm worried about the uncertainty that's happening. And so they start demanding a higher return on things like a 10-year treasury yield, on mortgage-backed securities, on these things that are going to be of risk going into the future if you have a compromised economy. Very differently from what people would think when the Federal Reserve lowered rates, that, hey, man, everything's going to be awesome. We're all going to have lower rates. We're going to go out there and participate in the economy. We're all going to have this really good time doing it. That's not the case. That's not what ends up happening. So it's very important to understand that the Federal Reserve and their adjustment of interest rates is not the profound tool. It's the communication about it. I've tried to put this out there for so many years now. I mean, the credible threat theory is now more prevalent, more relevant, and more obvious inside of the economy today than it ever has been. So once you have internalized the credible threat theory, you don't look at the actions, you look at the reactions that people are having to the information, because that is very important. The Federal Reserve is not in a position in which that they're trying to support the politics or even damage the politics. I don't care how many people want to say that they are, they're not, right? They're not here to support the housing market. They're not here to support the stock market. They're not here to do a lot of these conspiratorial things that a lot of people say that they are doing. Does their actions do that? Well, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, yes, the Federal Reserve in some of their actions and what they have done has definitely done some of the things that people are claiming to, like the conspiratorial things that people are claiming. yes, those things occurred, but it wasn't them doing that for that reason. Men understood, I mean, women too, people understood that what they were doing was going to give them the ability to profit immensely off of it, and they took advantage of it. Now, a lot of people want to say the Federal Reserve did that for them, all right? Okay, yeah. I mean, how do you disagree with it, right? But I don't believe they did it for them. I believe that they were doing something very different, and these guys took advantage of that situation. The Federal Reserve is not in a position in which that they can just willy-nilly do whatever they want. As much as people want to believe that they can, they can't. The Federal Reserve is in a position in which that they do really two things. Set interest rate policy on the short-term lending, which is like the overnight lending rate with the big banks, not the long-term lending rate, not the 10-year treasury. I mean, they have the abilities to adjust the yields, like yield curve control kind of things. But that's not what they're up to right now. Like, I mean, is it something that they've done in the past? Sure, right? But that's not what they're up to right now. Right now, they're dealing with short-term interest rates, the overnight lending rate, the repo facility, the discount window. These are all very short-term interest rates within the banking system. Those long-term interest rates, those U.S. 10-year treasuries, the mortgage-backed securities, things like that, that's all market. That's market participation within those particular investments that will raise and lower the interest rates within those particular assets. But to understand that it's about, perception that is going into it. The Federal Reserve is in a different position. They supply money, right? Figure out how much money needs to be in the system in that short-term interest rate setting policy. That's it, right? Now, a lot of other people come like with all these other ideas. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to really disagree with all that stuff, but that's not what their purpose is. That's not what they're intending to do. They're intending to deal with what it is that I have been saying, which is money supply and short-term interest rates. Now, the major problem that they are facing is that the neutral interest rate. Now, a lot of people have heard me say that. When I say neutral interest rate, you'll probably roll your eyes for the amount of times that I have actually said neutral interest rate on my channel, but that is by far the most important thing to look at. And you can't even actually observe the thing, right? Because nobody knows exactly where neutral is. Neutral is somewhere out there, and we'll figure it out over time, but you can't pinpoint it where it's at exactly right now. So the Federal Reserve is in a position in which that they are trying to reach neutral, but neutral moves off of inflation expectation. So we have to remember this. If you have inflation expectation that is well elevated, it will raise the neutral interest rate. People will demand higher return on their capital investments, and in turn, that will eventually lead to the neutral interest rate moving in an upward trajectory. Now, if the Federal Reserve is sitting still and neutral is moving up, that makes the economy less restricted. The Fed can sit on their hands and really be more in a stimulating fashion. It's not stimulating because they're still restrictive, but less restrictive, which is in a lot of people's view, they would see that as stimulation, which it's not. Right? But if the Federal Reserve was to sit still and raise the neutral interest rate with an elevated inflation expectation that is running prevalent within the economy, the Fed is literally sitting on their hands and getting the job done. They don't have to move. So when people say, when is the Federal Reserve going to lower rates? And it was just like, don't look at the Federal Reserve lowering rates. Look at the neutral interest rate and where the Fed funds rate is in relation to that. And again, this is very difficult to see. You can see it over time, and you can know that if there is an elevated inflation expectation, it will continue to push the neutral interest rate up. So even though you can't see it directly, you can know an idea of which direction it is moving and why the Federal Reserve is sitting still. Right? See, if you want to add more complication to it, then you can. There's all kinds of stuff that you can add to this that'll make it more complicated. What about tariffs? How are the people's perception about what tariffs are going to do to the economy? Well, elevated tariff expectations, elevated inflation expectations, elevated neutral interest rate, Federal Reserve sitting still. Right? And so this is what we end up finding. It was like, all these people who thought that there was going to be a bunch of interest rate cuts throughout 2024, it didn't happen. Right? Here we are going into 2025, and there's talk about even raising rates from here. Kashkari was out there talking about lowering rates at the end of the year. Like, we don't even know what the hell is going to be happening towards the end of the year, and he's thinking, well, maybe sometimes towards the end of the year we might be cutting rates. Like, what do you see that's going to be going on that's going to have the impact on the economy that gives you the belief that there could be a lowering of interest rates going into the future, since nobody understands anything that's happening right now, because these tariffs, although have been promised, have not been delivered. Right? But the message is being delivered. The message is loud and clear. The message has a profound impact on the economy. The message is causing an inflationary expectation, which will raise the neutral interest rate, literally supporting the Federal Reserve's ability to make the economy less restrictive, them not having to do anything, and they're achieving their goals. It's crazy to think, right? Most people will not see it this way because they didn't internalize the credible threat theory to begin with. Once you have internalized the credible threat theory, all this makes perfect sense. It makes so much more sense. Now, you can add conspiracy theories and manipulation and New World Order and all kinds of stuff to it, and there's probably a lot of truth that can be stated inside of it, but ultimately what it is that I am talking about is the ultimate base of it all. Everything else after that is an addition of complication or opinion or something of that nature. Now, again, I'm not one who's making this stuff up, right? A lot of times people are like, dude, you're so clueless. I don't even know where you get your information. Everything that I talk about, I have backing for. And now, granted, when it's my opinion, you probably recognize it as my opinion. But when it comes to the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy, I have done so much research on it. I have now delivered so many videos, breaking it down in so many different directions, constantly bringing you the links to the documents from the Federal Reserve itself. This is not my assumptions. This is the reality of the situation. The problem that most people end up facing is that they call the Federal Reserve liars. They call them buffoons. They call him Mr. Magoo. Remember that one just recently? It got me really good. All these people have this misunderstanding of what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing, and that right there is how the Federal Reserve is able to retain their power. See, if you understood that the Federal Reserve was going, like, I didn't understand that most of us here, we got 146 people watching, have heard this before, especially those who are members of the channels, like I see like flipping through the comments right now. But if the people, what I'm saying, the people themselves, if they were to understand that the Federal Reserve is not trying to get to a 2% inflation target, that is not their goal. Their goal is a 2% average inflation rate over time with no mathematical formula for figuring it out, and that they're seeking to achieve an inflation rate that is moderately above 2%. If people were to internalize that right there, just that statement, that's coming from the Fed. That's not me. This is the Federal Reserve stating this. Right? If the people were to internalize that, they would look at the Federal Reserve and say, man, they have achieved their goal. They're not trying to get anywhere. They're there. But nobody sees it that way. They say the Federal Reserve is still trying to get somewhere. They're not trying to get anywhere. They're trying to get right here where they're at, moderately above 2% for some time, to create an inflationary scenario to make up for the fact that they failed to achieve the 2% target over the previous decade. They have switched from a target to an average inflation rate over time, and therefore they have a makeup strategy where they will allow inflation to run extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time to make up for that deviation from the 2% target over the previous 10 years. This is their strategy. Nobody sees it that way. I mean, the 166 people right now, you guys are aware of it. You know, the few thousand people who have watched the credible threat theories videos that I have done, we get it. We understand it. We will find the news articles to be more of a narrative control than an information delivery. Well, this is the way we see it now. Like I even yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody talking about the credible threat theory, talking about the sovereign wealth fund. right? Talking about how this is going to, the information being delivered is impacting the people. And literally at the moment that we were having the conversation, another person had joined in, kind of hearing a little bit of what we were talking about, and starts going off about the sovereign wealth fund and how this is going to, how damaging and all this other stuff it is. And I'm looking over at, the guy that I was having the conversation with, and we didn't say anything. We were very quiet. We kind of agreed. And then they walked, that person had walked away. And I said, there it is, man. Do you see it now? Because I had just recently shared the credible threat theory with them. And it was almost as if it was like presented to him, like, here, this is exactly how it works. You got the information. Okay. You know that the sovereign wealth fund was nothing more than an executive order to create a plan, not an action, but a plan for action, right? It's like, hey, we're going to build a house, but first we need to build the blueprint. That's what this executive order was to build the blueprint, not to do anything at all. There's no action being taken from this. However, the people lost their mind over it, believing that there was going to be all this kind of money being dumped into a sovereign wealth fund, even though that doesn't even exist. Right? And now understanding it from that direction, we now look at the people who are receiving the information and how they are reacting to it. It's not a matter of the sovereign wealth fund. That's not important. What's important is how people are reacting to the idea of it, because that is having a profound impact on the economy. The more that message gets delivered, the more of an impact it's going to have. And so I don't even look at the sovereign wealth fund as far as anything goes, because it doesn't exist, nor does any kind of action for it exist. But yet the people's perception of it is very, very prevalent and profound and powerful. All right. And this is what we're now witnessing. That individual that I had shared the credible threat theory with was just blown away. It's like, you're right, man. You're right. If I didn't know about the credible threat theory, I would be just like this other person, losing their mind over this whole thing, not realizing that it doesn't even exist, nor does any plan for it exist yet. The creation of the plan has been set into motion, but not the actual plan. And so many people, when they see it differently from that, they see it in a way that says, man, the government is out of control. Look what they're doing. They're all this other stuff. And I'm like, they ain't doing anything. They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything at all. What happened was the president signed an executive order and says, here, go over there and think about this thing and come back and tell me what you thought about. That's what the plan was for. Nothing else. Right? All right, appreciate your time, Simon. Well, thank you guys for being here. We got All Nighter says 2-minute judge. Okay, I'm not sure what that's about. Jason Bender says even a 6-year-old can figure out economics of the United States and how to save money. A 6-year-old can do it better than the Treasury. Okay. All right. Hot Rod, why are you watching? Then you can leave. Hey, there you go. Thank you, Trucker Brad. I'm not sure what Hot Rod had to say, but I agree. I'm not even going to go and find the comment. I trust Trucker Bod myself. So, let's see here. All Nighter. This is obviously over Hot Rod's head. Okay. Yeah, you guys. Hey, let's move on to something else, because we don't need to talk about Hot Rod. Alright, so let's think about this. If interest rates go down, housing prices go up even higher, make it make sense. Okay, Ultra Fire, but let's talk about that for just a second, because interest rates did go down on the Fed funds level, right? Interest rates went down on the Fed funds, and all the rest of the rates went up. So do interest rates go down and house prices go up? Do interest rates go down and U.S. Treasury, yields go down? I mean, there's I wouldn't put those two together. I would stop looking at interest rates being the main reason for a house price, because it didn't work, right? Interest rates were down 4 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. They were really low. House prices were cheaper back then than they are today. Right? I mean, interest rates were at 3%. Houses were cheaper then than they are today at 7%. Now, granted, there are probably some areas where they are cheaper, but not my area. I mean, I live in one of the most expensive places in the entire country to live. We have, like, one of the most expensive living expenses cost anywhere in the entire country. Like, where I live is very difficult. If there was ever a place in this country that has a difficult place to make it, Astoria is it. It is a prime location for inequality, gentrification, all that other stuff, right? Because this used to be a working class town. It was full of loggers and fishermen. That's what was here. Now it's full of hospital district, remote workers, retired folks. All this new money's coming in. It's driving the value of everything up around here, and it makes it very difficult for the people to afford it. I know I have a working class job. I would have had to leave my area if it wasn't for the fact that I have YouTube going on. I got the side hustles going on. I got all kinds of things in order to make it here. It's very difficult, right? It's very difficult to make it here. And so when I listen to people out there who are like, oh man, we need to do something about changing and figuring out how it is that everybody can get out there and have a good standard of living and find a house and find a way to have a family and all those other things, and I'm thinking, you ain't gonna get it. You ain't gonna get it. That's what your mindset is that we need to figure out a way that this can be created inside of our environment and our economy so that, a working class job can go out there and make it too. You're gonna fail. That's it. I mean, I don't mean to give you a hard time or anything else like that, but I'm just looking at myself. If I was to take that sort of mental attitude towards, everything that's going on within this economy, I would fail. I would fail miserably. I can't do it that way. I have to say, no, things have changed. These houses are expensive. There's no way that this working class job is going to do it, even though it's a good job. It's a good job. I mean, I got health benefits. I got retirements. I got, vacation. I got all this stuff. But it's not enough. Not here. Maybe in some other place in the world, maybe at some other time in life, but not right here, not right now. And so to understand that we have to step it up in a very dramatic fashion in order to make this thing occur. That's what we have to do. That's what this whole point of this channel is to figure that out. All right, what time is it? Oh, gosh, guys, I got to go back to work. All right, you guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We got 162 people watching with 49 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. You guys are awesome for being here. And I hope everybody kind of understands, it takes into consideration that the Federal Reserve and their interest rate adjustment setting policy, right, which is what everybody is focused in on, is not important, right? It's important. It's less important than the people's perception of it, the narrative, right? Whatever that narrative is, that's the monetary policy tool that they are using. It's difficult to see, but once you understand and internalize the credible threat theory, and then you recognize it, and then see how the people are reacting to it, it becomes very clear. Pretty soon, it's like you almost can't unsee it, right? All right, all-nighter hider, thank you for being here. Brody, thank you guys. You do a great job being moderators of the channel. I'm so glad you guys are here taking care of the comment section for me. I don't know what else to say. You guys are wonderful. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.